being comfortable with being uncomfortable, eventually leads to familiar relationships and gratification and all of those things that relationships are the thing that matter most in life. So I feel blessed in my profession that I am able to foster many relationships professionally, but they also by default lead to friendship.
This is the Main Street Reimagined podcast, a show for people ready to turn visions into realities and ideas into businesses. Hey, I'm Luke Henry, and each week I lead conversations with Main Street dreamers who took the leap to launch a business, renovate a building, or start a movement. Their ideas, their mindsets, and their inspirations, as well as some of the highs and lows along the way. This is a place for dreamers, creators, developers, and entrepreneurs to learn, share, and be inspired to change your community through small business. Enjoy the show. Hey everybody, Luke Henry here. I am excited to once again have you back to the Main Street Reimagined podcast. And this is a special episode because this is our first episode on location. So those of you that are watching on YouTube, or if you didn't know that there was a YouTube version of the Main Street Reimagined podcast, now you do. And those of you watching on YouTube, you'll see that the background looks a little bit different because we are here at 179 East Center Street, Dostal and Kirk Insurance and Financial Services, here with my friend Logan Kirk.
Morning,
Logan,
Luke.
welcome.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. So appreciate you being with us. So those of you who don't know Logan and I met about 7 years ago or so when his family came into town with the purchase of Share Insurance, and we'll let him talk a little bit about that. But early on, I know that Logan, you jumped right in to become part of the community, and we had breakfast or lunch a couple times during that those early days, and kind of got to know each other. And we'll certainly get into your whole story and how you landed downtown here, co-located with Connect Coworks.
Yep.
At your new office here, but I'm excited to dig into this.
I appreciate you having me. Been looking forward to this, and we should have a good discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess let's start with Dostal and Kirk. So just a brief overview, what you do, what types of services. Sure. You have other offices. Where are those located? Tell us a little more.
Yeah, sure. So Dostal and Kirk was originally founded in 1875 out of Bucyrus, Ohio, which one of our offices is still located in Bucyrus today. We have, aside from Bucyrus and Marion, we have also a Gallion location and a Powell location. A little bit of history. My dad, Jeff Kirk, who's still a business partner of Mike Dostal and I, and involved in the agency probably when I was 8 years old. He started Kirk Insurance and Financial Services in his hometown of Gallion.
Okay.
So he had spent about 20 years of his career on the insurance carrier side, which is obviously a big part of our model and what we do, and right. the carrier partners that we have. So then we were living out in Indianapolis at the time. My grandparents and cousins, aunt and uncles were still in North Central Ohio. So he kind of reached a point in his career in the company side where he's like, long term, am I really going to be happy here in what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And a lot of what he did on the company side involved the independent insurance agency distribution channel. Mm-hmm. So early on in his career, he called on a lot of agents, including at the time it was the Alk Dostal agency, or maybe Neff Dostal and then Alk Dostal a little bit later. So Mike's dad, Dave. So my dad actually called on Dave and his father. So it's a small world within the insurance industry, but all that to say that my parents took a leap of faith back in 2000. They decided to move back to Ohio. So they moved to Shelby, which is where I grew up, my mom's hometown. That's where she graduated from high school. And my dad he went home after work one night and told my mom, look, I feel like we're at a pivotal moment. if I'm going to do this, now's the time. I don't know what else I'm waiting on. I just feel like over the years, I've been able to interact and have relationships with so many agents. I feel like I could be a really good agent. And so my mom said, okay, if that's what you feel we should do, then let's move back home. So we had lived in Indianapolis for about 5 years. So I think we moved to Shelby when I was 8. So within that next year, my dad started Kirk Insurance in Galion, and just started by himself. So, and then eventually figured out that he could not sustain doing new business, servicing accounts, and he really needed to bring someone else into the fold. Yeah. So then he hired Denise Livingston, who still works in our Galion location. Wow. Has been with us pretty much since day one. Cool. So it was, I never, early on, when I was, in elementary school age, middle school aged, I never really knew what my dad did, but I knew that he was a highly regarded professional. A lot of folks within the community respected him, and he really, I have to give him a lot of credit. He's always been very well polished and professional, very, just approachable. And he also coached football when I was in high school. I went the cross country and track route. I not built that way.
Not the linebacker. Builder.
No. But anyways, I think that being a coach and then translating that to business, I think that kind of molds you a little bit. Yeah. And that experience, but anyways, fast forward, my dad, built up his own practice over the years in Galion, and then Mike Dostal joined his dad Dave in Bucyrus back in 2005. Probably around the 2007, 2008 timeframe, Mike had been in the business a little bit, and Dave invited my dad to lunch with him and Mike. And within that lunch, Dave said, I think we should merge our businesses. Wow. And my dad's like, oh, okay. Can you tell me why, what brought you to that conclusion? And he said, I think that we would be better together than we are separate. I'm eventually, approaching retirement. Mike really doesn't want to do this on his own. He would love to have, a business partner in this. And, you're kind of between my age and Mike's age from a succession planning standpoint. That helps. But also what happens to Denise and your office here, or if something happens to you, and vice versa. So it made a lot of sense at the time. And my dad brought to the Dostal agency services that they didn't provide at the time. So my dad's always been focused in the financial services space. And at the time, Alk Dostal didn't do financial services. So when I say financial services, really that just means from an individual perspective, individual investing, disability income protection, long-term care coverage, things of that nature. And then on the business side, you've got retirement plan. So 401k plans for companies, group benefits such as group life, group disability, things of that nature. So anyways, so it was seemed to be a good marriage, and so they became Dostal and Kirk back in 2009 officially. Mike had just moved his office into the building where we're at now at 120 South Sandusky, which he and his wife Kylie actually live above it.
Yeah, which is a super cool loft apartment space. I got to tour with them. Obviously, I love that kind of thing, and they've done a fabulous job with their space. Yeah. It's super cool.
No, we're really proud. Honestly, we're really proud of all of our offices, and I'm sure we'll get into how we transition to the space we're in now. Eventually in the conversation, but we're really proud of the spaces that we have. So anyhow, we eventually, Mike and Jeff realized that at the time that around that kind of that recession time 2008 to 2010-ish, they realized long term that if we wanted to excel and grow as an organization and really to protect what they have built in Crawford County, we needed to expand. So they made the decision to open up an office in Powell, which the office in Powell is where we're still located down there, right by the zoo. And it was about 2011, 2012. And then I joined the business in 2016 as an insurance advisor. So really focused in on sales, new business production. And then the opportunity came up we had a John Scherer's agency and Dostal Kirk. We had a company, a carrier in common. Had the field director that we reported to, or that he managed the relationships at each agency. He kind of arranged the marriage, so to speak.
Yeah.
He just felt like, culturally, both of our organizations would be a good fit. John had built up a great practice, along with his father, Ron Sr., who started the agency originally years ago. And and John didn't really have a succession plan. I think his son had been involved in the business at some point, but decided it wasn't for him. So within our space, making sure you have an exit plan is so important, not only just from yourself, for the owner of the company, but your staff, the clients within the community, et cetera. So we purchased Scherer Insurance in January of 2017. And at that time, I had been in the business, I had been on the insurance company side for a couple of years. But then when I came in as an advisor, I think I had been at Dostal Kirk for a few months, and Mike and my dad came to me and they're like, "Hey, we have an opportunity to purchase this agency in Marion." Spoiler alert, I didn't grow up in Marion. I didn't really know a whole lot about it, but it just seemed like it was a great opportunity for us, and so we went ahead and went on with the purchase, and then I shifted my focus to really being in Marion full time. Because in order to see a business transition like that through, you've got to have boots on the ground, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, particularly with the way that John Scherer had been so involved in the community. I got to know him when I came kind of into town as well, and started plugging in probably about 10 years prior to when you did. And, he was definitely a fixture in the community, in the Rotary Club, and some different nonprofits, and so to be able to carry that torch was a cool opportunity for you.
Sure.
But I'm sure also kind of big shoes to fill. In some regard from that community involvement standpoint.
Absolutely. I know that. Long term, all of the office locations that we have, we've always considered ourselves to be a pillar in the community. Not only are we providing protection for all these families and businesses to make sure that they don't experience financial hardship if the unthinkable does happen, but we always believe in giving back to the community, and whether that's investing your time or whether it's us investing financially from a corporate level. But our community involvement is what we put into it, so to speak. So the more we can invest in our community, the better our community is going to be to us, and vice versa. There's certainly a correlation there. But yeah, I felt like I had to earn my way in, so to speak. Not only internally with the office staff, they don't know me from anybody else. So you've got to earn that trust of the staff of the business that you've just purchased, and certainly that takes time to develop. But then also community trust. We at first we had no plans to change the Scherer name off the business. We felt like, especially at the beginning, that would have not been the best idea. Just to make sure that we establish trust within the community and an identity of, okay, well, who is Dostal and Kirk, and what's their connection to Scherer Insurance?
Sure.
So yeah, that was certainly a big part of my involvement in the Marion office, was plugging myself into the community and making those new relationships. So a lot of those relationships, like ours, have, we work together professionally, but it's also a friendship. So that's been really gratifying over the years to develop so many genuinely good and deep personal relationships here in this community.
Yeah, I love that. So kind of the last few episodes on the podcast, we've ended up sort of going to this place of discussing really family in family business growing up in small business environments, what that teaches, and what you can learn, both as a child if you've come up through a family business, and then kind of how you look at it as you're a parent then moving forward. And so I'm curious if you'd reflect a little bit on growing up in the family business. I mean, it sounds like, as you said, like you didn't necessarily know exactly what your dad did, but you observed from a distance. You saw him being involved in various community organizations, and I'm sure attending certain things during the day, and then maybe perhaps even after hours, and how that affected your family life, and if there were after hours calls for different emergencies that took dad away as you were growing up. I mean, reflect on that a little bit, and kind of what you saw and what you learned as a result.
Yeah, I think, I mean, from a very early age, I mean, especially during the beginning stages of starting the business, there was a while where my family probably didn't really have an income. My parents were living off of their savings that they had built up over the years. So, I mean, definitely more budget constrained. I remember early on, when my dad started the business, it was like an alternation between tuna helper and hamburger helper for a while. But no, I mean, but that's the risk that you take, right? You talk about taking that leap of faith, and that's what my parents did. And I say my parents because while my dad is the business owner, my mom is just as involved because it's the family.
Oh, absolutely.
And I know that you appreciate that with your wife Lindsay, and your involvement and your co-involvement in some of the businesses, but then kind of doing your own thing as well.
Sure.
You need a good spouse and a good foundation at home in order to support what you're doing for work.
Yeah.
So first of all, my parents have always had an amazing marriage. I'm sure there were maybe some times where things weren't so great that maybe I'm not aware of, but I mean, to us as kids growing up, we always felt like our parents were in a great marriage, loved each other very much, and loved my sisters and I very much as well. And so there were probably a lot of times after I went to bed that my dad was up working on his, I don't know what the computer would have been, like probably like a big fat Dell laptop or
Right.
something, plugged into broadband or Roadrunner or what have you. But one thing I will say is my dad very rarely did he ever miss an extracurricular for my sisters and I, both early on when he was getting the business started to later on where he was probably a lot busier, managing a lot more, so a different kind of busy. But I feel like my dad displayed, I work hard, but I'm able to prioritize what's important.
Yeah.
And there's only 24 hours in a day, so how can I creatively be efficient with my time and ensure that I'm still getting what I need to get done at my business, and helping my clients to where it doesn't suffer at home.
Yeah.
And he really never brought work home with him. And now that, Kayla, my wife, and I, we have a 1.5-year-old Lucy at home, and I try to keep that in the back of my mind now as I'm in the parent chapter of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you recall, did you all talk about the business and stuff, kind of around the dinner table type of conversation? Did you display an interest in the business at any time growing up that you remember that, you were kind of asking your dad questions about it? I mean, because ultimately you came into the fold, so you developed an interest somewhere. Was that a childhood or not until later?
Probably not until later. I mean, in terms of, really kind of having deeper conversations about, professional responsibilities. I just knew that when I was 12, I started my own auto detailing business. I had always kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit about me, in terms of being motivated, really kind of establishing customer service skills when you're dealing with clients, or customers for their vehicles. So I always knew that entrepreneurship and owning a business resonated with me from an early age. I just didn't really know what that looked like. Quite honestly, I still am a big car person. I loved cars growing up, so I'm like, oh, maybe I'll own my own car dealership and I'll pick the exact brands that I represent and this and that, and that never took shape. But anyways, that's kind of where things started for me. Probably when I was in late high school, I did get to know a little bit more in terms of what my dad specialized in, and the fact that he worked with families, he helped businesses, and that really kind of brought my interest into insurance. Some people's experience with insurance is just seeing the commercials on TV with the big names out there, and really is, at the end of the day, it's really a noble profession. And it's what we do is we take it very seriously, because what the policies that we're putting our clients into, it's a contract. And in order for a claim, if something does happen, in order for that claim to be handled properly, that contract's got to be written the right way, with the proper coverage in place in order for that to go smoothly. So that's kind of, then in college, did a couple internships at Cincinnati Insurance, who we represent as an agency. And then after college, I worked for Ohio Mutual Insurance Group in Bucyrus. Did an underwriting rotation for a couple of years. That was a really, if I have any, a big recommendation for whether it's insurance or another professional services, or anything like that, get experience first under someone else's time, because being on the insurance company side, even if for just 2 years, I felt like really helped my business acumen, my knowledge of insurance. Built a lot of really great relationships while I was there that a lot of folks now I deal with on the agency side directly on the company side.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a lot of fun now, kind of working with folks that I respected a lot back then and being able to work with them now in a different capacity. I feel like my experience there on the underwriting desk really made me a better advisor today.
Yeah.
So that's something I would kind of reflect on.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of things kind of, as you were talking about some of that I'd like to dig into briefly. One is insurance. Now, I don't want to turn this into like a 4-hour podcast on insurance, because not everyone is as passionate as those of us who live it a little more every day. And I include myself in that bucket now, because folks like you have really educated me on the importance of insurance, and there's really a lot more to it, I think, than what a lot of people realize, especially if you have different real estate investments and different aspects that way. But even someone that just has a home and auto or renter's policy and an auto policy or whatever, I am such an advocate of the local independent insurance agent, just because I've had such great experiences with you guys and with some other local companies as well.
Yeah.
And just anybody that I talk to, I always recommend that if they are with one of the big ones that they've just called in and gotten a policy over the phone or whatever, that they at least look at one of the local agencies, not only because you're local and because if they have a claim, they can literally walk through your front door. They're not just talking with someone on an 800 number.
Right. And
that you will do a comprehensive review with them to really understand or educate them on the coverages and make sure that they have the proper things in place. But just in a minute or two, can you kind of explain the benefits of dealing with an independent brokerage type agency and what you can offer that maybe somebody that is not aware is out there? Sure.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, just, when you think local first, our agency, as well as, our friendly competitors here in town and in the other communities that we're in, there's some great agencies out there. I have a lot of respect for a lot of the different ones that we compete with. But the benefit of us being local is we employ local people. We give charitably in the local community.
Absolutely.
So I think that that's something to be said for dealing with local, because we support, local in the community and the folks that we employ too. But then beyond that, just the amount of options that someone would have at an independent agency like ours. So, when we engage with a potential client, whether it's a business or a family, we have numerous insurance carriers that we have a relationship with. And ultimately, we have a process that we take every potentially new client through to audit their current coverage, to match them with the carrier that makes the most sense from both a coverage and a rate perspective. So for lack of a better term, an independent agent can shop around on your behalf. We're looking at numerous options, and ultimately we're selecting the one that makes the most sense for the client. So options just within the amount of companies to choose from, but also typically independent insurance agents are going to have product offerings that are broader than maybe one of the big guys that you hear about on TV, such as their commercial insurance appetite, or the type of maybe it's life insurance products or disability income protection products on both the personal and the commercial side. So I think just access to more is probably a theme there.
Yeah. So again, whereas if I call into one of the places that I see on TV, just 800 number, they really just represent themselves. So they may generate a quote, might even be able to do it very quickly to say, hey, for your auto, it's X dollars, and for your home, it's Y dollars.
Right.
Whereas you're going to, not only go through that process with them, but also shop that to several carriers and say, and so maybe be able to find savings that way, because you're literally talking with several carriers versus just one.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you hit the nail on the head there for sure.
And so again, just because we've had several conversations this way, not only as it applies to some of our particular coverages, but also you and a couple other local agents came and spoke with our real estate investor meetup lately, and insurance is getting a lot more attention lately because, and not necessarily all in a good way, because people are opening their renewal letters and sometimes seeing things like you're not getting renewed, or your price is going up 40 or 60% or something pretty significant. And I know that you've been on the receiving end of some probably not so pleasant phone calls as it relates to that. But just, again, in a minute or two, kind of explain a little bit of the dynamics of what's kind of happening in the insurance world, and how that's not necessarily, Logan price gouging, but actually a whole other kind of macroeconomic thing that's going on.
Yeah, no, it's been it's been now a hard market, which is what we refer to in the insurance industry as a period of restricted underwriting and higher prices. And we're all feeling the effects of that. I mean, even me personally as a consumer, I felt that as well. But what's been happening is convective storms, in terms of the frequency of storms and the severity of those
like
storms.
Literal storms.
Yeah,
yes. Right.
Yep. So, I mean, I forget how many tornadoes. I think it was like well over 70 that we've had so far, and normally just in Ohio, and maybe the average was maybe like in the mid 20s. So we're seeing it in terms of weather patterns, but that has a big effect on our business because it obviously, when the wind blows and hail falls from the sky, that's going to impact roofs, vehicles that are parked outside, etc. So the more events that we have, the more the more storms that we have, and the worse these storms are becoming in terms of severity. So what's happening in the background across the country, because this is not just affecting Ohio.
Right.
I mean, every time you turn on the news, you hear about a record-breaking hurricane in terms of Ian, just that hit a few years ago down in Florida. That was a multi-billion-dollar event, and that all affects our industry.
Right.
And things that are happening across the country are affecting us in Ohio.
Yeah.
Even though Ohio has had a more turbulent weather year than in the past, that's obviously a factor. But all of the insurance companies that we partner with and that are across the country or across the globe, they have reinsurance that they purchase. So essentially, they're purchasing insurance on their book of business to protect against a widespread catastrophe, to protect their balance sheet and their ability to pay future claims. So what's happening is, in the industry, the reinsurance market has really become, the reinsurance pricing has gone up a lot, and reinsurance companies are renegotiating their terms with insurance companies that you and I deal with for our insurance to what they're paying, but also how much of a loss or an event that they are going to retain. So, for example, there might have been, years ago, a company might have had a $5 million retention, and now the reinsurance companies are requiring them to retain the first 15 million. So not only are we seeing more weather events, but each time you have an event, the insurance company is retaining more of that loss. So I guess a long-winded way of saying, if that's happening at the top of the insurance food chain, it's going to make its way down to what we pay as consumers for our premiums. And within that too, the reinsurance companies they have certain requirements that they want to see their clients, the insurance companies, doing. A big topic right now is roofs. So it's going to become a mainstream concept that roofs will likely eventually be actual cash value. For a lot of years, the insurance companies were paying for brand new roofs on maybe a roof that had reached the end of its useful life, and the purpose of insurance is to indemnify somebody to put them back in their pre-loss condition, and obviously in those cases that's a much improved position that perhaps maybe the concept of insurance really wasn't being carried out on those terms.
Yeah, I get that.
So, but that kind of gives you just a little bit of, there's obviously a lot of other factors too, but I would say the reinsurance topic is just something that doesn't really get hit on a lot from consumer to consumer. So that kind of gives a little bit of a flavor for what's going on in the background.
Yeah. And that's coming on top of significant inflation, particularly in building materials and construction costs and all of that.
100%.
Kind of really building starting in 2020. So you had all those rising costs.
Sure.
And then increased natural disasters you're talking about. And all of that just kind of coming together on a perfect storm, not only affecting...
Not to use a pun, but yes, exactly.
Not only affecting the insurance companies, but then the insurance company's insurance company.
Right.
And essentially retention thing that you were talking about, that's almost like their deductible.
Yeah,
right?
correct.
So it's like the insurance company's deductible is going up. And so then they're asking for consumers' deductibles to go up, and also their premiums, and so that's all the bad news. But give us a little bit of good news in terms of what you're hearing in terms of industry trends. Do you feel like we're kind of getting to a balancing point to where maybe some of these sharp increases are going to be diminishing, and hopefully, especially if some factors fall into place that we could see them, kind of normalize again? Yeah,
I think you hit on quite a few things there in terms of inflation, and inflation affects everything, not only building costs, but what you pay for a vehicle, what a vehicle is going to be repaired for, et cetera. But within that, as inflation slows, so does all of those factors that kind of fall under that umbrella. So no, I do think that, personally, this is my own personal opinion, but I feel that we are, over the next year or so, hopefully going to be getting to a point of at least stabilization.
Yeah.
So not necessarily, now, do I think things are going to go down in terms of pricing and things like that? I would honestly, probably not.
Yeah.
I don't expect for that to happen, but I would think that, the significance of maybe the increases and maybe some of the underwriting changes that have been happening are being felt right now, but hopefully moving forward, it'll be a little bit more predictable and a little bit more stable.
Yeah. So again, I didn't necessarily intend to go too deep on this stuff, but I think that a lot of our audience is not only consumers themselves, but often business owners who are, seeing some of these increases, and these are tough to stomach sometimes, and also the being unsure of, am I going to see another 40% increase next year, or, am I going to get canceled, or some of that. But, hopefully good news coming our way. And I appreciate, kind of a little bit of a deeper dive there of people who are watching hadn't heard that, hopefully that'll be helpful to them to know sort of at least where it's coming from. Not that it makes it easier to write the check sometimes.
I think that education is knowledge is power in that regard. So, I mean, we're like, as you mentioned earlier, we are fielding, communications from clients. We're reaching out to clients when we've seen a significant increase go up and figure out, okay, why did that happen? Are there ways we could help? Could we look at higher deductibles? Is there a discount they might be missing that they should be getting? So to kind of do a little bit of a review there, but actually it has been a great opportunity though to maybe to communicate and reconnect with clients in that way. But yeah, it's interesting times out there for sure. And the more that the consumer is aware of the why, I think that helps.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned some important strategies to hopefully help if someone has seen an increase to look at raising deductibles, or again, if you're working with an independent broker that represents 10, 15 different companies, you might say, hey, well, that might have been the case with this company, but maybe there's another company out there that has a little bit more of an appetite for your particular kind of business, or maybe would be a little more favorable rates or terms of some sort that we could get you into.
Yep, for sure.
So encourage people to at least make that phone call and have some conversation. And again, looking for the local independent agents that are going to be able to give you as many options as possible. So that's good. So kind of shifting gears back to your particular story. So we always like to do this segment that we call The Leap. So where we talk about, where you really made a significant leap, where it was like a lot of planning, scheming, dreaming, overcoming fears and challenges and maybe objections from friends or family to ultimately make the leap. And I guess I could think of a few different ways that you might answer that question, but what did that specifically look like for you?
So I would say, when I first got into the business and the topic of purchasing share insurance was brought up, that was definitely a leap of faith for me, because at the time I actually lived in the Columbus area, and I was commuting up to Bucyrus. So my family was down, my sisters, my parents were down in the Columbus area. So family is really important to me, and I just wanted to be near my family. And I also had some friends from college that had settled around that area. So it just made sense for me. So I was looking forward to being on the road less, when I joined the agency and working out of our Powell office. But then this opportunity came up, and it was a brand new team that I had never met before. Many of those team members are still here today in this office. And in a community that I was not familiar with. And when you're in a community and you're not from there, and in my case, I didn't live there. So you automatically have this disadvantage, the stigma that you have to overcome.
Sure.
And because at the time, Jeff and Mike said, look, if this isn't the only way that this is going to work is if you're willing to be boots on the ground there, because if we don't have someone there in that community, it's not viable. It doesn't work.
Right.
So I call it a leap of faith, and just to decide to say, okay, I'm kind of uncomfortable with it just because of what I had mentioned, just the unfamiliarity with the community and not being from there, et cetera. But then it turns out that decision to proceed was, I would say, it was the best professional decision that I've made in my career. Getting all of a sudden over time, that feeling of being comfortable with being uncomfortable eventually leads to familiar relationships and gratification and all of those things that relationships are the thing that matter most in life. So I feel blessed in my profession that I am able to foster many relationships professionally, but they also by default lead to friendship, which I kind of touched on earlier. So I would say that professionally, that was the biggest pivotal moment. And I think that it's been gratifying for me, but it's also been amazing for our organization, bringing in, meshing our culture with theirs, and, they had services and we're able to provide services to clients that we didn't. So we really did complement one another. And we've also since that time grown our team.
Yeah.
So we've hired new people. So we've kind of meshed some existing with some new, and that's ended up being really good for us just as an overall organization.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the importance of relationships, which is such a key business principle in the first place, but particularly in your business.
Sure.
And so, I mean, that's fascinating. But I'm also curious, coming into a situation where the staff didn't know you, the community didn't know you, you needed to try to lead this organization, and you're fairly young, and young in your career at the time. Talk a little bit about what you learned about leadership during that time, and maybe some highs and lows that you experienced as you kind of felt your way forward through that time.
Yeah, I mean, it was first of all, it's the existing staff that John had. I think the closest person at the time in terms of age was maybe 10 years older than me. So the elephant in the room, you had these, well-respected, well-tenured folks within the organization. And then the 20, I think I was 26 at the time, I come in and now I'm working with John because John stayed on with us for a few years while we, transitioned the business and, again, to nurture those existing relationships and create some new ones. But I think just my age and inexperience probably, if we're totally being honest, probably played not in my favor at first.
Sure.
And I learned in terms of management techniques, I believe me, I've made a lot of mistakes over time, but I've also learned a lot, and it was like baptism by fire.
Yeah.
And in some respects, while I absolutely had the support of Mike and Jeff, sometimes you kind of just had to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because during the work week, they're maybe in a different office or in client meetings and whatnot. So I just kind of have to trust yourself and your own instincts, and go from there. But I would say, that was challenging, and there's nothing you can do about that. Age and inexperience is a circumstance. You just have to find a way to combat that. And actually, when I was going shortly after purchasing the agency here, Marion Technical College, the folks out there worked with us to create a customized, I don't want to call it like a coaching or a curriculum program. And then Pat Fox was my instructor there, and it was essentially a build your own course, a one-on-one course with her and I, and we were talking about just people management and running an organization. So I feel like just some classroom help in that regard really went a long way. But I would say, even though that was a very helpful experience, it's certainly been the best teacher.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think that you can't discount the fact that, again, you grew up in that environment, and your dad was a great role model from that standpoint. I mean, you saw him somewhat in some of those scenarios, coaching and everything. And I think you've there are a lot of similarities between you and your dad. I don't know if you've heard that before, but
for sure.
Knowing you both in a good way, So, but how did you, was there any specific kind of tactics that you felt like that you used in terms of, earning the trust of the team and of the community that you would share with someone else who might be in that scenario, find themselves in that scenario?
Yeah. I would say, genuinely getting to know somebody, and I think, again, you go back to relationships, but, they didn't know this about me, but I feel that I've always been a person where I want to get to know you. Like I want to know about your family and what you do for work. And I want to truly know you as a person. And I think that also I had maybe a little bit of I don't want to say a target on my back, but I was one of the agency owner's son. Mm-hmm. So age, inexperience, but also who I was. Yeah. So I think that it's easy. It would be easy in that scenario for someone to maybe not be as trusting for someone new coming in that they're not familiar with. And but I think over time, and I think all the staff here would hopefully say the same thing too, but I think that we have earned each other's trust over time, and earned the respect, because I think those are huge foundations that that are earned over time, trust and respect.
Yeah.
And I think that, along the way, I'm sure I stumbled. I know I did. But again, every time you fall, you learn something new about yourself and how to handle a scenario. So I would just say, again, getting to know folks that you're working with truly, but also just being patient. I mean, you want it to happen overnight, but it's not. If you're earning trust and respect over time, it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Because you have to prove yourself.
Right.
You have to prove yourself over time. And I think that one of the ways that you can earn that respect is, okay, not only getting to know the person, but get to know their job role. Because within our organization, me as an advisor, you're working with those other team members who are servicing the accounts, especially as a newer person to the agency, not just to Marion, but also I had been in the business 5 minutes. I was still getting to know, okay, when do I delegate this task versus when do I do it myself?
Yeah.
And really trying to learn. And that was actually a great opportunity, Luke, when I was going through that process myself, because then it made us as an organization look at, okay, well, how does Dostal and Kirk do things versus how do the folks at Share Insurance do things?
Yeah.
And that certainly didn't happen overnight, but over time, we found, with everybody's input, we began finding the best way. Maybe it was some things that, the Marion team did better. Maybe their process made more sense than the way we were doing things.
Right.
So over that time, you have to be open to changing things.
Yeah.
You have to be open to new ideas. You have to be open to change. Change isn't always better. But, typically to be better, you do have to make a change in that regard.
Yeah. So I heard you say a lot of things in terms of, coming in with curiosity versus, expectations, but curiosity about the process and the people and really genuinely caring. Of course, there's the John Maxwellism. People don't know how much you know. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yes.
And I think that, I heard you saying that you had to prove that you really cared about the people before you stepped in and were able to have, a professional relationship with them. And I agree, probably coming in with a bit of a disadvantage, because of your age and everything, but having some humility around that.
Yeah.
And I've seen people do this really well, where they come in and with experienced people, genuinely, hey, you've been doing this for 20 years. Teach me. I'm here as a student.
Sure.
Yes, I'm installed here to eventually take over, but I need to learn from you.
Yeah.
You're the expert in this particular area, and so teach me.
Yeah, and to that point too, I can't discount the amount of experience that Mr. John Scherer had,
Sure.
In his career, and being able to learn from him. And again, there were things that I learned from him that, coverage wise, that I never, maybe that we weren't aware of, that maybe some best practices that we should keep in mind as an organization. So being able to work with him and Janet at our office here, and nurturing those existing relationships, and then also obviously, creating new ones over time. But that experience really helped my my insurance acumen, learning from somebody else that maybe was, aside from Jeff and Mike, that was really helpful.
Yeah.
And he, not only was he helpful in kind of integrating me into the community, I didn't feel like I was going it alone.
Yeah.
But so that was also helpful in combination with paving my own way,
right.
Finding what groups or things that resonated with me. So I think it was a good blend of both.
Yeah. I call that kind of borrowing someone's trust. Where he kind of made the introduction, you get to borrow his trust for a while. Although then you have to establish your own with people as well by doing what you say you're going to do and being reliable and friendly and all that on it, on a consistent basis. So that's super cool. And so, I mean, it's great to hear kind of your whole story, the agency's whole story, how you eventually found your way to the Marion community. But especially I'd like to hear your perspective on what you've observed while in Marion and some of the positive changes that have taken place, really starting shortly after you coming here, and where I think things have really accelerated for our community in a lot of senses. And then if you want to integrate into that story a little bit, how you ultimately, we connected and
Sure.
ultimately led to you moving downtown.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, again, new to the community, had really never been I've been to like Route 95 area of Marion before, passing through and whatnot, but I've never really been in town. So, getting to know the community from that perspective, but also seeing where downtown was located. And then you're right. Shortly after we purchased the agency, I believe is when, at the time, you and Alex Sheridan had launched Main Street Reimagined.
Right.
And we're starting to, buy your initial buildings, and we've had the opportunity to work together through that process too, which has been really gratifying and cool. But, as you have mentioned to me before, it doesn't happen overnight. Mm-hmm. It takes time, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and patience. But I think it's been really neat to see kind of year over year since we've been in the community how much downtown specifically has improved. Yeah. How much more feet are on the street. People don't feel like they have to go to Delaware to get a good meal, on a Friday night anymore. We have good local options. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I feel like the redevelopment that's been happening downtown and my involvement with the community, it makes me proud because, with when I'm talking to maybe outsiders of Marion about the community mm-hmm. and, our presence here, but also all the good happening within the community. It's a fun story to tell because I see what it started as when we got here, right. And now being, I think, the thriving downtown that it is, and you're continuing, and you and other community members are continuing to invest in additional buildings, businesses, et cetera. Yeah. So, and again, it's nice to see the community supporting that. And it's only going to be successful long term if folks continue to support that. And Absolutely. It seems like over time you've built that track record of that community support. So that's been really cool to see.
Yeah. So then you're now located right downtown. Mm-hmm. Did not used to be when you initially came in with the acquisition of the agency, but I don't know where it was, somewhere along the lines. I remember us having a conversation, something to the effect of, hey, if it ever comes an opportunity, we'd kind of like the idea of maybe being downtown. We're downtown in Gallion, we're downtown in Bucyrus.
Right.
Those communities have seen, some resurgence as well, and we just love that vibe. We love, being plugged in,
being part of it all
to the downtown. And so, we had that conversation and then even had a couple conversations about, hey, would this place work? And we looked at some others. I was like, not quite. And it's not quite what we're looking for. But then the opportunity came here. Yeah. And we were, doing some fairly significant renovations and reorganization of the building as we created the Connect Co-work space and also made a new home for Holbrook and Mantor. And, so I led you through this space. It certainly looked a lot different back then. So talk a little bit about that.
Just outside the glass door here, I believe it was maybe a combination of filing cabinets and Christmas decor.
Right.
And there was no window there before either.
Right.
So that was a game changer in making this a new storefront. But no, I think so. We were never married to our old space because mm-hmm. we never owned the building that we were located in. So over time, as we continue to see the good things happening downtown, and you're exactly right, we enjoy being in kind of the heart of it all in Gallion and Bucyrus in those two locations. So I think even maybe I had taken you to our other offices just to kind of show you, hey, if we're going to be really thinking about eventually doing something, want you to see our other offices. Yeah. Because we kind of want we want a similar theme or a vibe, I guess, between all of them. And then this space opened up, and I think you and I and Jeff went out to lunch maybe at Attaboy's, maybe maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago now.
At least, yeah.
Yeah. So you laid out the vision, the floor plan, and kind of how you envisioned it working. And again, you had to have a vision because that space now is nowhere near what it was before.
Right.
So it's absolutely, we're very proud of it. Yeah. It's a beautiful space. Any company vendor that comes through here or any client that walks in the door is so impressed. And at the end of the day, that's what we wanted.
Yeah.
We wanted to wow people when they walked in. And we're just an honor to be a part of what you've done here. And I know our team just enjoys it, the heck out of it as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's so good having you guys in the building. All of your team is so positive, and it's good to see smiling faces as we go about our day-to-day interactions. But yeah, I mean, that was our goal. And I remember, a couple of the other spaces that we looked at previously, I think maybe your words were, it's nice, but there's just not the wow factor. Like we want people when they come into our agency, whether they're local or whether they're, carrier representatives or whomever, to say, wow, this is really nice. I wouldn't have expected to find this in Marion.
Right.
I mean, that's almost like our calling card, is to try to create those types of spaces and experiences, and working together closely with you and your team. I think we did.
Yeah, no, we absolutely pulled off a beautiful space that we're really proud of. And we couldn't be more thrilled. It'll be a year this coming January. So we've been here a little under a year, but it's funny. I mean, we've been here less than a year, but it feels like we have been here for a little bit, because we feel very settled. It feels natural. Being able to just walk out the front door and go to Mike's Deli and grab a sandwich and bring it back for lunch, and then enjoy the outdoor space that we have that you created in the back, which is awesome. So it's in that ribbon cutting a few weeks ago with the governor was kind of a cherry on top. Hats off to you and your team.
Thank you. Super cool. I love the outdoor space too. I walked out there, and I know you were having a meeting the other day, so it's a great space for that, to be able to get some fresh air and still have some privacy if you are having a meeting or something. So being able to, for folks that haven't been in, they have their completely own space, their own offices. This is their private conference room that we're in today, but then they also kind of have the bonus of being able to enjoy all the Connect Coworks amenities. So the kitchen and some of the kind of work areas over there and the outdoor space and all of that. So what you guys also, kind of have the neat distinction of also being the ones that have the vault. So you have the most solid spot in downtown Marion, probably for, if there was ever some natural disaster, God forbid.
If we put a door on that, it would be a good panic room pretty quickly.
Right.
It's built like a fortress.
Yeah. So folks don't know this building at one time was Fahey Bank location, and they are Marion's oldest bank, dating back to 1865. I'm not positive what years they were here, but when they installed a vault in the middle of the building, which is like all steel encased in concrete. And so trying to get some the renovations were a little challenging.
We had to get a little creative, but ultimately I think we landed on a really great floor plan that was great.
Yeah, and we kind of leaned into it. If you would have walked into it prior, you wouldn't have known. It just kind of looked like a room, and there was a drop ceiling and stuff like that. We kind of took some of that out and just leaned into the fact that you can see the exposed steel and some of that. So it's a cool space.
Yeah, it ties in well for sure with the overall aesthetic.
Yeah. So those are just the kind of unique touches that we love about historic buildings, and being able to tell those stories and also integrate those stories into the spaces that that our tenants and partners are going to be able to take into the future and use those in a cool way.
Breathe new life into the space too. I mean, again, our entire area of the building really. But when Holbrook and Manor owned it at the time, it was kind of just storage, and when paper files went away, I'm sure it just kind of became a filing cabinet graveyard, so to speak. So now, what wasn't really being utilized before is now another storefront for downtown that we're proud to occupy.
Yeah. And again, we love the way that you plug into the community and are going to the local restaurants, and when you guys have company events, you're incorporating local vendors and all of that. I mean, it's so important. So, kind of rounding the corner a little bit. I mean, as you look forward in, your position here with Dostal and Kirk and in the Marion community, and as you look at Marion and how you all fit together, I mean, what are some things that you're excited about as you look down the road?
Yeah, I would say just the continued growth of the community, not only downtown, but then, you have others that are, that are coming into the community. They're bringing businesses, they're bringing employees that, they're building homes and whatnot. So just seeing that overall progress trend continue is exciting. I would say too, we're very lucky to have, I feel very blessed to have the team that we have.
Yeah, sure.
Here.
Absolutely.
And Evan Geyer, who actually just celebrated his 4th anniversary with us.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of crazy to know how long that's gone by.
Yeah,
but he was actually promoted to office manager here at the beginning of this year. And that's a role that he's really settled into quite well. He's really, he's been hitting his stride professionally in the community, and that's been really exciting to see. So I just look forward to his continued success and growth, and he's in it for the long haul. He has found his forever career. We talk about that quite often in terms of how passionate he is about what he does. Yeah. So it's great to see us grow as an organization in that way too. Not only Mike and Jeff and myself, but to have other team members that are coming in new to the business or newer to the business, and being able to be successful and have eventually a more just a healthy community in that way, and contributing to that. But I would say we'll absolutely continue and build upon all the other things that we do from a community involvement perspective. We're always been really involved with the annual Y campaign, United Way fundraising, all the various nonprofits that we support in the area, and we'll continue to do what we can do to support those as well, in addition to the businesses of our clients and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of great things ahead for sure for Marion. We talk about that often. We're excited about it, and I think that both of us are fortunate to have a unique perspective from the standpoint that we get to see kind of from a little bit more of a holistic standpoint, where we're seeing all of the good things that are happening in small business and real estate and even residential homes that are being renovated or built, and healthcare and schools, and just a lot of things moving forward, and people working together very well. I was just involved in a meeting the other day with a bunch of community leaders talking about just how the community collaboration and support and teamwork is really at an all-time high. And so I think that that's what it's going to take to continue to move things forward for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
So appreciate you being part of that.
Yep.
I always like to ask as well, just for the kind of benefit of our listening community, if you've had any like educational resources or inspirational things that you draw on during some of the challenging times of business and leadership that you might share.
Yeah. It's funny. So not necessarily a direct resource in terms of like a podcast or a magazine, but just a couple of groups and people that I'm affiliated with.
Okay.
So the OIA, which stands for the Ohio Insurance Agents Association of Ohio, they have a Next Gen Council where they've created a group and a forum where we meet every so often, and we use each other as a resource. So agency owners that are of the younger generation, kind of replacing folks as they retire. So that's been really good. But then also just partnerships and relationships that I establish just on my own, aside from that organized. But I do have a couple of friendly competitors, specifically in our business, that I bounce stuff off of all the time. I think that you can't overlook and respect the what others are doing and how they're doing it. And lately, as we've tried to retune some best practices and some client communication, I have leaned on friendly competitors of mine within our business that aren't affiliated with Dostal and Kirk, and we've been able to learn from each other and have a lot of respect for one another. So I would say just surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you and that are ambitious and that share your vision and your values.
Yeah, that's really good. We've not had anyone recognize that particular avenue, but industry and trade organizations are such a good place to get leadership training and of course, industry specific knowledge and expertise, but also the relationships.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I feel like I'll have to brainstorm about the title for this episode, but it's probably going to have something to do with relationships, because that's kind of what keeps coming up.
Yeah.
And it's just so instrumental to being successful in business and in life.
Yep.
And you point to that and really embody that. And so I think that's definitely a big takeaway and great reminder for anybody listening, just how important relationships are. And
Yep.
And
100%.
And you know, to your point, you know, not to glaze over the fact that that's even relationships with competitors, you know,
Sure.
people that are doing things and just having good relationships within your market and within your industry space. We can always learn from others, and I think that so often we hesitate to talk with people or to share best practices or inspiration or education. And there's, you know, to have an abundance mindset, to know that there's enough work out there for all of us.
I was just about to say that.
We can support each other and you know, still remain competitors, but also like try to be getting better as a result. So
and the mutual respect that goes into that is huge for sure.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Logan, for being on with me here. There's been a lot of fun having this conversation, hearing your story, and just some of the lessons that you've learned along the way. And we really appreciate you sharing those with our listeners, as well as your involvement in the Marion community and the way that you and your team are working hard to not only do your business well, but also to give back and to be plugged in. It's so important, and we appreciate
absolutely.
it.
No, I appreciate the time and the opportunity. This is a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So thanks again to our listeners for, being with us. We appreciate those of you that are giving feedback on what you like hearing, maybe what you don't even, and sharing your ratings and reviews on your different listening platforms of choice. So we hope to see you again in the next episode. Thanks again for listening. Thanks for listening to the Main Street Reimagined podcast. To learn more about Main Street Reimagined, Henry Development Group, or our work in downtown Marion, Ohio, please visit mainstreetreimagined.com. If you want to connect, or if you know someone who we need to interview, shoot us an email at info@mainstreetreimagined.com. Until next time, keep dreaming and don't be afraid to take the leap.